You're watching Women of Strength TV with a purpose-driven woman who has a yearning deep in her soul to serve the world. Presented to you by Ange Wilcock, creator of Evolutionary Model of Well-Being, Mindfulness-Based Storytelling, and the Raw Woman Project, a businesswoman on a mission for every human on the earth to feel enough.
Hi and welcome to another episode of Woman of Strength. And we were just talking off air because Karen's never done anything like this before and just saying, how do we need to be? And it's like, well, let's just be ourselves, because in the introduction I made a mistake, and that's what we do. We're just being natural women. And so again, welcome to another episode of Woman of Strength. And today, as I said, my guest is Karen Fasulo. Welcome, Karen.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. And I'm just going to read you a little bit about Karen. So Karen is an entrepreneur and mother of 3 active daughters, and found her passion for baking when her kids were very small. And Karen soon opened a cake decorating business with the idea of only baking from scratch with memories of her own childhood. It was this business that helped her through the separation and divorce of her marriage. And through her business, she discovered personal strengths and skills that had been masked for years. She decided after 10 years it would be best to move on from her retail business and further her career working for leaders in the industry. Currently, Karen is pursuing her business analysis certification through the University of Toronto and is launching a new business. So welcome, Karen. Now, one of the things that I didn't do at the beginning, is that I've changed it now, is I didn't put my recording on gallery view. So we now are on gallery view. So for any of you watching, you can see both of us all at once. So Karen, my first question to every amazing woman that I interview is, what was your journey into being that woman of strength? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, I think for my journey in particular, it started out as me feeling confident in who I was and the decisions that I was making. And then all of a sudden feeling very, very suffocated, very weak, and very drowning. And that had a lot to do with the journey that I was on. I knew I loved being a wife, I loved being a mother, but I felt like I always needed to be there was something of me that was missing. And that's why I decided that I was going to pursue an entrepreneurship where I was going to open up the cake decorating business. That really helped me rediscover who I was again, because I felt so lost. I felt like my identity was no longer Karen. It was, like most women who go through this, it was like I was a wife, I was a mother, I was a daughter, I was sister-in-law, but I lost who I was. And that's where I decided that I needed to try and find me again. And I knew that my marriage wasn't going well. And I wasn't sure exactly why. I knew what I probably had not a lot to do with it, but how I was feeling about myself had a lot to do with it. And I allowed a lot more to happen in my marriage than possibly what I would have allowed right now.
Yeah.
And so I had to go on this journey and find who I was, which meant the end of my marriage. And it was through the business that actually gave me the strength to be able to say, you know what, enough is enough, because I started to develop who I was again. I was able to go and I was able to be a boss, and people came to me to ask me for advice, and I was able to train people and share my knowledge. And then I was still able to go back, and at this time I was still able to be a wife, and I was still able to be a mom, and I loved that. And I wanted to find more of that. And I felt like I was happier to be around. I wasn't feeling so sad all the time, and it was lovely. And those strengths just kept growing and kept growing, and it helped really, because unfortunately when my marriage did end, I had 3 very small girls at the time, And their father then decided to leave the country, which now left me a single mom 100% of the time. And I'm very fortunate that I have a very supportive family base who is around, because it does take a village to raise a family and children. It really does. And I was able to let down my barriers and accept help, which is something else that's really, really hard. It was very hard for me to do. And I think it's really hard for a lot of women to do, is just to accept help when they're in that feeling where they need to be strong and they need to survive and they need to plow through, but they don't know how they're going to get there. And that was really hard for me.
Yeah, because we try to be everything to everyone, don't we? And, you know, we're playing out, like you said in the beginning, we're playing out so many roles, and we tend to become really strong in all of those roles. And then sometimes we go, well, actually, I can't cope with a specific one, whether it's a wife, a mother, a sister, or whatever, but we don't ask for help. Like you said, we just plow on. So with you, when you decided that you were going to become vulnerable and ask for help and support, what was the first thing that you did?
I probably cried.
Right, yeah.
I cried. Like a little child to my mother, who that was not something that she had seen for a very long time, and it was definitely not something that I had done for a very long time. But, you know, in this situation, it was no longer about me. It was about how was I going to help my girls through this situation? Because yes, it was terrible for me because, you know, I couldn't, you know, my personal life and journey where I thought that I was going was disrupted. But my children's lives were completely torn apart, which is so much more for them than what it was for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so my goal then, my focus switched to how was I going to support them through this? And how was I going to make sure, and it sounds really bad, but I have 3 little girls and I didn't want them growing up having daddy issues. So how was I going to make sure that they were okay when their father chose to leave and completely leave? And not be a part of their lives anymore. And it was no fault of theirs at all. They're just innocent victims in this. So I went and I asked for help from my parents. I went to counselors, and, you know, the whole thing, how do I help them through this? And through that journey of how to help them, I learned how to help myself as well. And that was kind of tricky on my own self, trying to figure that out, because I don't think that I would have necessarily went just for me, but I had absolutely no problems going to see what I can do to help them. And the best advice that I received was, you know, just to validate their feelings. And I didn't create the problem, so I can't fix the problem. Yeah. And I think also a lot of times that people get stuck on, how do I fix this? How do I want to fix this for them? How do I make this better for them? And you can't, unless you made the problem, unless you created the issue. You can try all you want, but it's never going to be what they're looking for to have it fixed.
No, and it's so important, like you said, to validate their feelings, because that builds resilience in them too, doesn't it? You know, it's about, this is how you're feeling and it's okay. Because I think certainly myself as a parent, and being a strong parent growing up, and again being a solo mum, what I showed my daughters, which on reflection, I know how I would do it differently now, which is what I do differently with my granddaughter. But what I showed my daughters is that a woman can deal with anything, you know, and that crying is for sissies, and, you know, you just get on with life. And of course, I'm very different now. But back then I look, wow, you know, what I showed my daughters is you just get on with it. And, you know, very rarely did they see me cry. And if they did, it was very much about, you know, oh, it was always someone else's fault. And so they grew up wanting to protect their mum, which was never my intention. And so, you know, what you're doing with your young, I mean, mine are grown up now in their 30s, but what you're doing with your daughters is amazing, because you're this positive role model to show that life is all about balance. You know, being strong, we can also be vulnerable. You know, there's strength in vulnerability and showing our feelings. And yeah, so it's a good lesson to learn. I mean, that's something I certainly learn, and I demonstrate for my granddaughter. But I can't, I wasn't so amazing at doing it with my daughters, and I acknowledge that and I've apologized for that. But so it's wonderful to hear that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of a meltdown earlier on today because,
you're human.
Human, right? And that's the way that it is. And it was, they came to support me. So we are growing with each other and supporting each other through this. I hope that I'm more of the support. I support them more than what they support me, but it's nice to know in my time of need that they're there to comfort me as well.
And that's what they're learning, because that's what it is to be a woman, isn't it? Or even a very young girl or a young woman. We're very, very nurturing, and so it's our natural instinct to want to nurture another, another person. So whether it's your mother, whether it's your friend, or whoever it is, so it is a natural thing for them to want to do. So. Yeah. Fantastic. Now, how is all this learning that you've experienced on this journey, how has that transpired into, those skills that you've learned into your business and setting up a business and growing a business?
Well, yeah, definitely. So the self-confidence that I have gained has catapulted my business to new levels. I mean, I chose to close that cake decorating retail business after 10 years, but it wasn't because it was failing. It was because it was, number one, it was getting to be too busy and too much, which is, most people would think, well, why would that be a reason to close? But I am one person, and my girls, and I have 3 girls and a house and guinea pigs, and there was only 24 hours in a day, and I was drowning. I said, I feel like a little fish, and my lips are just right above the water, and I'm just barely getting the air, and that's not at all what I wanted. It took incredible self-confidence just to be able to close that business and say, you know what, I'm moving on from this, and I'm okay with that. And I don't feel like a failure because I couldn't do it, I struggled for about 6 months with that because, closing means failing, and it wasn't a failure. It really was a success. I've just now chosen to move on. And what life do I want? Because I was working 6 days a week. I was working, 14 hours a day. And that was not the life that I wanted either.
Yeah. There's no failure in that, is there? Working. Because your story is so connecting to mine, because when I become a solo parent, and that was the first thing that I did, was set up my own business, and it was catering. So it was around food, and very much the same. Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, doing what I needed to do before I got the children up from school, take them to daycare and to school, do my delivery. I did a mobile catering business, and then come home, pick them up from school, clean up, have a couple of hours, and then start again. And and like you, it gets so busy, and it started getting too big. And it was like, I have to employ people, and I haven't got the time to employ people and run a home and run a family and be a mom and socialize and have a life myself. And so I totally get it when you say it's not a failure. You're not failing. What you're saying is, I'm ready to step up into the next part of my life, whatever that is. But like you're going on to university and doing your was it systems analyst or
business analysis?
And that's exactly what I did.
Really? Oh my goodness!
I did exactly the same, except it took me 7 years 5 years, because I had to do a 2-year diploma first before I could go on and do my degree, because I didn't have enough qualifications from school. So it's so funny how the universe just brings people together.
So funny.
Yeah. And so how are you finding your course? Have you started, or?
I did, yeah. So it's really challenging. It's, going back, it's really, really hard to find that mental focus. I find that I'm reading and I have to, and it's not sticking, and I'm not used to that, right? And you have to clear the clutter and, of everywhere, and just be able to concentrate and get back into that mindset of learning and studying and yeah, and it was very, very, it's very challenging, very, very challenging. And
yeah. And so how are you managing to juggle with that? So with your studying, attending lectures, and then managing your home life as well?
Well, I'm doing it online. So it's a distance learning. So I'm able to do it at night, or actually I do it during the day when the kids are at school, because I'm mentally done at night. And the thought of trying to learn at that time too doesn't work well. So I'm able to, but it's scheduling. So I had to learn how to be very scheduled, which was not a strength of mine before. I just was sort of like, oh yeah, this will be great, but let's go with the flow and have some fun. But no, I've had to actually, write out my weekly schedule. Okay, this day I'm doing these chapters. This day I need to work. This day I need to clean my house. This day I need to, all that sort of stuff. So that really, really helped, because I knew that I would only have to concentrate on it for this day. And then I didn't need to think about it all the time. So I wasn't always having different thoughts in my head. And I found that I learned a little bit better that way.
Yeah, because when we're focused and it's planned out, we keep gaining momentum, don't we? Whereas if we don't plan and we go, oh, I can grab a couple of hours here to do this or to do that, there's something else that's going on in our mind, because we're thinking, oh, I could be doing something else. Whereas it's planned, we've already told our mind that's exactly what we're going to be doing for the next X amount of hours. And the mind goes, oh, okay, let's focus then. Let's do this task. So yeah, and great skills for when you have completed and go off and do what you're going to do next after that. So do you know what your next step is once you've gained your qualification?
Well, it's still more in the business world that I would love to be in, as well as the bakery world. So I'm working with some industry leaders right now to launch a new product out there that hopefully will be able to take off. So I'm using what I've learned so far in the business analysis to be able to set up this business properly and structurally sound, because the goal of this one is to grow it and then eventually sell it. But with the business analysis certification, I would love to actually eventually open up almost like an online consulting, so that I can help entrepreneurs with that. Because I remember when I first opened my first business, I was all over the place. I didn't understand a lot of what I needed to do, and just sort of flew by the seat of my pants, which was great. And I was able to make it work. But I think that if I had a little bit more skills and someone to guide me a little bit more, then I would, things would have been a lot more structured. Exit strategy is, of course, like very important, which I knew nothing about until after I was trying to exit.
Yeah. And I think that's the important thing is that being a strong woman, we think we can do everything for ourselves, even when we're in business. That was a big learning curve for me. It was like, well, actually, then when I started building a team around myself and allocating different tasks to people, it became easier. But at the beginning, it was very much, I can do this. I don't want to be paying out for someone else to do it. But that was my biggest learning, is do that from day one. If you can do that from day one, the minute you decide to go into business, focus on what you're good at, and the things that you're not good at, if you can afford it, bring someone on board or do some training or something around it, because it will push you forward much, much quicker. So it's great that that's something that you're thinking about doing, because there is a great need out there. And it's also, for us as strong women, to let other women know, hey, it's great you're going to get out there and set up a business, but ask for help, because it will cut back time in the long term. Believe me, I've been there, and I'm sure, like you said, you were at your other businesses.
Definitely. Yeah. And a lot of heartache and a lot of frustration and feeling like you can't do it. And I remember too, feeling, I'm no good. And that's a terrible feeling when you're trying to do something that you really don't know anything about. But you have all this pressure because you have to do it because it's your business.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel so worse. And it's so true. If you focus on what you do know and what you can achieve and let someone else do that, because that's their strength. And why can't, right? And then everybody feels good, and it's exactly right. Then the business goes.
Yeah. And I think, if you surround yourself with female entrepreneurs, we've all got our strengths, and we're always happy to support another woman. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to pay for it. It can be, hey, I can help you with this because that's my area of expertise or genius, but I'd really love some help and support here. Yeah. And it just works, it just works. But people sometimes are really, they feel very vulnerable at letting the outside world know, oh my goodness, I can't do this. And, what are people going to think? I have one of those moments this morning where technology still frustrates me, and I get as much help as I possibly can. But there's some simple things that I think, I should be able to do this. And it was a simple thing like putting a link to a free resource on my Facebook page. And so I did it. I managed it. I was so proud of that. And then when I shared the link, you obviously can't share it outside of Facebook or whatever. And I shared it. And then people going, it's not working. It's like, so instead of just sitting there for hours, I just put this message on a networking group that, a female networking group that I belong to, and say, look, this is happening, what do I need to do? Yeah. And I got 2 or 3 people come back to me straight away saying it's something quite simple. This is what you need to do. And it was fixed, but probably only 6 to 12 months ago, I would have sat there for hours Googling, YouTubing, to find out how to do. YouTube is great, but what I found with all these wonderful, social media and online things is that what we try and do, or certainly I do as a woman, I try and resolve it myself first. I think, right, I can go to YouTube, I can go to Google, and I'll spend hours when all I really needed to do was ask someone. And it's a big lesson. So, yeah.
And I think too, like, we have to remember is that people do want to share their knowledge, and they want to share their expertise. And I would want that if someone was wanting to ask like a baking question. My friends and people email me and send me messages all the time asking me about baking and recipes and everything. And I think nothing to sit back and share what I know or give them little tips here and there. So it's the same thing. You have to really remember that people actually, they want to help.
Yeah.
For me personally, it's always remembering that just because you're asking for help doesn't mean that you're not good.
No, that you're not weak. It's actually a strength, isn't it?
It is
the more we can get that message out there, the better it's going to be for everyone. It's a strength to ask for help. Yeah. And so on your journey that you've had today, is there some gems that you'd really like to share with women listening to this today that you think, I know that if I pass this on, this is really going to help another woman?
I think just to be, the best thing is just to be gentle with yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I'm not even still, like my incident just probably an hour ago, I'm not very gentle with myself all the time. And you need to remember that you are only human, just like everybody else, and that you deserve a little bit of a break, and that you push yourself way too far. I know I pushed myself way too far. I expect too much of myself. I expect too much sometimes of my kids, and nobody can meet those expectations. So just be really, really realistic with what you can do.
Yeah, great. And that gentleness that you're talking about is also self-awareness, isn't it? Because it is about being self-aware. It's about, I know I do this stuff, but I'm still going to be gentle. I'm not going to be tough on myself and tell myself off. I'm aware that I do it, and I'm getting better, or whatever it is. So thank you. Now, if women would like to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
They can find me on Facebook.
Yeah.
So Karen Fasulo is my Facebook page if they want to get in touch with me there. They can always email me at karenfasulo123@gmail.com. Or Instagram as well. And I've just
cool.
So those are the 3 best ways to get in touch with me.
Great, and really look forward to what you're doing next. So that'll be interesting to watch that unfold.
Yes.
Yeah, and so anyone who would like to get in touch with Karen, you can do that, as Karen said, and all the information will be under this recording, so you'll be able to get in touch quite easily. So thank you so much, Karen. It's been great talking to you, and I've loved hearing your journey.
Yes, thank you so much. It was great to share.
I hope it wasn't as painful as you thought it may have been.
Not at all.
Cool. Thank you.
Remain real, authentic, and whole. Be yourself and continue to follow your dreams. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Woman of Strength TV.